We need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery.
In just 24 hours, the FBI got flooded with over 1,500 fresh leads aimed at bringing her home safely. Out of those, investigators marked more than 750 as solid enough to chase down. While that cache didn't close the file instantly, it shifted the information pipeline in a way a standard media briefing never could. Putting up $1 million in cash shows raw public sorrow and hits parts of the city that a government hotline usually misses. On March 2nd, the growing shrine outside the New York residence saw a visit from Savannah, Annie, and her husband, Tommaso. It marked their initial public appearance at the house, where they dropped off a bouquet and a handwritten note. The card said that even though darkness and doubt are everywhere, their love still shines incredibly bright. It ended with a heartbreaking message about how much they miss her. If you want to see justice served, hit that like button so this story spreads to someone holding the key to cracking this whole thing wide open. As we hit day 32, the organizational landscape looks a bit different. The Bureau has officially moved its main operations center from Tucson over to Phoenix. After remaining on lockdown as a federal crime scene for more than 4 weeks, control of Nancy Guthrie's residence has finally returned to her relatives. The Puma County Sheriff's Department released a formal update stating they are shifting their strategy on the case, moving from the massive initial manhunt to a tighter, specialized task force of homicide detectives working directly with the FBI. You need to pay close attention to that shift, because the specific phrasing reveals a narrative that the press releases aren't saying out loud. Pivoting to homicide units is not how you handle a standard missing person situation. That is the vocabulary of a criminal probe, where the goal shifts from locating a victim to constructing a solid prosecution against the perpetrator. This doesn't imply the police have given up on Nancy, but it does signal that their tactical stance has moved from a frantic rescue to a methodical legal build-up. Sheriff Nanos gave an interview to NBC reporter Liz Kreutz on March 2nd. That conversation held several key moments that haven't been properly dissected yet, specifically when he used the word definitely regarding their momentum. When asked if they were nearing the suspect, he stated he thinks they are definitely closer. He mentioned they have plenty of intel and leads, but now the real work begins. He didn't say they hope so or they feel good about it. He said definitely. That is a very specific choice coming from a veteran officer discussing an ongoing federal case on the record. He chose his words with purpose. The moment Nanos addressed the genetics, I had to ask, did the sheriff mention anything about the DNA found at the house? Yeah, Craig. That is the million-dollar question. I pressed him on it. He admitted they are hitting some real challenges processing that sample. He implied the evidence might be a blend from multiple individuals rather than just two, which experts agree makes isolating a single profile extremely difficult. He noted they have uploaded some of the recovered genetic material into the FBI national database known as CODIS. There are no matches so far. However, he remains convinced the unidentified genetic markers could belong to the suspect and views it as a solid lead, even if it requires patience. He verified both the complex sample issue and the lack of a hit on the glove. Then he dropped a detail that should alter your entire perspective on this investigation. His squad holds specific, crucial evidence that he refuses to release because doing so would ruin the case they are currently building. He admitted that while the public is desperate for details, it would be incredibly reckless for him as a police leader to divulge everything right now. Everyone wants the inside scoop, right? But he stated clearly that he would be failing his duty as a commander if he spilled those details to the general population. They possess intelligence that they believe will ultimately solve this mystery. But he emphasized that getting there is a process that takes time. 100%. Absolutely. You are not looking at a law enforcement official making excuses for a cold case. You are looking at an investigator protecting a hot lead. There is a specific angle being pursued that has been kept completely secret. We need to look exactly at the full pile of evidence the detectives are sorting through right now. They have the doorbell footage. His physical build, the mustache, the holster style, the backpack, the gloves, enough detail to ID the guy the moment he is spotted. They have DNA from the glove, a full unknown male profile sitting in CODIS just waiting for the entry that triggers the match. They possess the complex genetic mix from the house, which is currently undergoing high-tech statistical analysis at a private forensics facility down in Florida. Teams are scanning consumer ancestry databases with the genetic data, a strategy completely separate from the government files. Plus, they are working through over 1,500 leads since February 24th, with half of them considered solid enough for the task force to chase. They are combing through thousands of hours of local security video frame by frame. Agents are also hitting up gun shops and tracking down the sales history of that specific holster. Investigators are hunting for that backpack across every resale site imaginable. Then there are the two women who visited the site in early March, claiming they were 100% sure they knew the culprit. Deputies sent those ladies straight to the sheriff's office. Since then, officials haven't said a single word confirming or denying where that chat led. They are running data from cell towers, watching bank activity, and analyzing digital footprints near the scene. On top of that, they have that one major piece of evidence the sheriff refuses to talk about on TV to keep it safe. This investigation isn't cold. It is in its final construction phase. We track every single update, so make sure you subscribe and ring the bell to be here the second an arrest happens. To really understand why investigators view the DNA evidence in this case as a guaranteed roadmap to the kidnapper's identity, you have to appreciate just what forensic science can actually pull off these days. We aren't talking about theory, but the actual, proven results labs are getting right now from biological samples picked up at crime scenes. You have to start with the basics of what genetic evidence really is in a legal setting. When techs process organic matter from a scene, they aren't trying to decode the whole human genome with its 3 billion pairs. They don't sequence the whole genome, which would take years and cost a fortune. Instead, they zoom in on specific, highly unique spots called STR loci, or short tandem repeats. These are the regions of your DNA that look wildly different from person to person. The FBI's CODIS system tracks 20 core STR loci for every file in the database. The odds of two random people having the exact same profile across all 20 spots is roughly 1 in a quadrillion. Remember, there are only 8 billion people on Earth. The math is undeniable. If investigators can pull a complete profile from the biological material at Nancy Guthrie's crime scene, that data acts as an ID that is basically absolute. You cannot argue your way out of a match like that. It isn't just circumstantial, it is the molecular truth of that person's identity. But what happens when the sample is dirty? What if you have genetic material from several people piled on top of each other? That is where the last 10 years of tech advancements become crucial for this specific investigation through a method called probabilistic genotyping. It is a numbers game where advanced statistical models sort through mixed samples to figure out who contributed what. Platforms like STRmix, developed with agencies in New Zealand and the US, and TrueLLA from Cybergenetics in Pittsburgh, have turned what used to be a dead end into a solvable math problem. These systems don't just guess. They crunch the entire set of data points and frequencies against population stats to spit out profiles with solid likelihood ratios. Judges in the States, Australia, the UK, and all over Europe now routinely accept these computer-generated results as valid evidence in trials. Specifically for this investigation, it means the jumbled genetic evidence found at the scene isn't necessarily lost. It is just complex and requires a lot of heavy lifting. That lab in Florida might need a few months to crack it. But difficult is not the same as destroyed, and Sheriff Nanos knows exactly where things stand and hasn't written it off yet. He specifically chose the word viable. Aside from probabilistic genotyping and beyond the standard CODIS search, investigators have confirmed a third avenue they are aggressively chasing. And frankly, this is the one the suspect needs to worry about most: investigative genetic genealogy. Back in April of 2018, authorities in California finally put cuffs on a 72-year-old retired cop named Joseph James D'Angelo. He was the infamous Golden State Killer, a predator who terrorized California throughout the 70s and 80s, managing to slip through the fingers of police for over 40 years. His genetic signature was found at every single crime scene. They ran it through coders constantly for decades without a single hit because he had never been booked for a qualifying crime, effectively making him a ghost to standard law enforcement databases. That changed when detectives took his DNA profile and uploaded it to GEDM Match, an open-source genealogy site where regular folks upload their data just to track down long-lost relatives. D'Angelo hadn't put his own DNA there, but his distant kin had. We are talking third or fourth cousins, people who bought simple ancestry kits to learn about their heritage, never suspecting they were lighting a beacon that would lead straight to a serial murderer. Experts in genetic genealogy took those remote matches and started building family trees in reverse, branching out from the DNA found at the crime scenes. They traced lineages forward through time, digging through birth announcements, obituaries, marriage licenses, and census records, until they whittled the list down to just a few men who fit the suspect's age, gender, and location. Once they zeroed in, they grabbed D'Angelo's DNA from a discarded item in a public trash can to verify the match. By 2020, he had pleaded guilty to 13 counts of murder and dozens of sexual assaults. The judge handed him multiple life sentences with zero chance of parole. Since that breakthrough, this exact method has solved over 500 cold cases all across the United States. Sheriff Nanos has gone on record confirming that his team is pursuing this exact strategy, running the DNA profile from this investigation against commercial genealogy datasets right now. Even Cece Moore from Parabon Nanolabs, the legendary genealogist responsible for solving hundreds of those cases herself, stated she feels incredibly optimistic about the sample recovered from Nancy Guthrie's home. Let's break down what this actually implies. The kidnapper doesn't need to be in the CODIS system. He doesn't need a rap sheet or a mugshot. He doesn't even need to have used a genealogy service himself. If a sibling, a parent, or even a distant fourth cousin has ever taken a test from 23andMe or Ancestry and shared that data publicly, then there is a digital breadcrumb in that system pointing right at him. And, make no mistake, genetic genealogists will find it. They will reconstruct the family lines until they find a male who fits the physical stats, the right age bracket, and the geographic footprint of this abduction. After that, it is just a matter of grabbing his DNA to confirm. The Golden State Killer believed 40 years of silence, and a clean record made him invincible. He assumed the science to catch him was pure fiction. He was dead wrong, undone by a single kit submitted by a curious relative he probably didn't even know. Just one kit. In a nation where over 40 million people have now swabbed their cheeks for these tests, the odds that absolutely no relative of Nancy's abductor has done the same are practically zero. The dragnet is massive. It expands every single month as more users join these platforms, and investigators are combing through it at this very moment. Hit subscribe, like the video, and comment DNA if you think genealogy will solve this before a standard database hit does. Now, let's talk about the unique pain here, because there is a type of grief that differs entirely from mourning. Mourning starts when the loss is final, when there is a body to bury, a funeral to attend, and a concrete date of death to mark the beginning of life without them. What the Guthrie family has endured for 32 days is not that. It is something far more grueling because it lacks definition. It offers no closure, just a mourning that starts with the same brutal, unanswered question. And every night ends in that same suffocating silence. Savannah Guthrie still shows up to the Today Show studios. She takes her seat at the desk. She delivers the headlines. She remains poised and professional for 3 million viewers, most of whom might not realize the woman on their screen is simultaneously waiting for the phone to ring with news of whether her mum is still breathing. Then there is Annie Guthrie, who lives near Nancy and was the last one to see her safe at home, carrying the heavy burden of that final, mundane goodbye that now feels anything but ordinary. Cameron Guthrie took a different route, publicly calling out the scammers trying to profit from his family's nightmare, confronting them with controlled rage. These are 3 siblings, trying to function normally during an abnormal disaster, forced to do it with cameras rolling, because their famous last name turns their private hell into national entertainment. In her video from February 24th, Savannah said something that resonated with everyone watching. She looked into the lens and admitted, "We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone. She acknowledged that her mom might have already gone home to the Lord she loves, dancing in heaven with her parents and her late brother Pierce and their father. And if that is the outcome, they will accept it. But they need to know where she is. That specific plea, not just for justice, though that is implied, not just to find the culprit, though that is essential. The desperate request from a daughter who has mentally played out every ending is simply, tell us where she is. Because the state of not knowing is a torture all its own. It is a cruelty inflicted on a blameless family by a man whose motivations, whatever they might be, can never justify the agony he has forced upon them. On March 2nd, Savannah, Annie, and Annie's husband Tommaso visited the memorial growing outside Nancy's house. Amidst the flowers, photos, and candles left by strangers, they placed a card of their own. Their message was both simple and heartbreaking. Though we are surrounded by so much darkness and uncertainty, our love burns bright. We love you, Mommy. We miss you so much. This is where the science of DNA transcends mere criminal justice. When they put a name to this suspect and the science says they will have his home address, they will map his movements, know his friends, dig up his history, and find his roots. When you look at the full scope of a life, the answer the Guthrie family has been waiting 32 days to hear might finally emerge. DNA doesn't just tell you who did it. It can lead detectives to everything that person knows. Everything he did, every place he visited, including where he took Nancy. Let's build a complete picture of the man investigators believe they are hunting. We aren't guessing here. We are sticking to confirmed evidence and expert analysis. We know he is male. The video footage makes that clear. He stands between 5'9" and 5'10". He has an average build, not huge, but clearly fit and capable enough to handle the physical demands of that night. A black mustache seen under the mask puts him likely between his late 20s and early 50s, old enough to be patient, young enough to be agile. He is organized, the planning required to pick that address, watch it for nights, acquire gear like gloves, a mask, and a firearm. Then arrive at 2:12 a.m., ready for a camera that reflects a person who doesn't act on impulse. He anticipates, he preps, he thinks ahead. That mindset is significant, not just for the crime, but for what it tells us about his daily life. He has never been arrested for a major felony. The negative result in CODIS proves that much. But the lack of a rap sheet doesn't mean the lack of a dark past. It just means his history, whatever it holds, hasn't generated a biological record in the federal database yet. There is a big difference. We also know he has ties to the Tucson area, or at least he did at the time. The repeated scouting trips reported by neighbors imply he had access to the area for weeks. He navigated those streets at 2 in the morning with confidence. That screams local knowledge or incredibly intense rehearsal. There is a specific tick in that Ring camera video that every single analyst who has looked at this publicly agrees is the key to cracking this guy's head open. He didn't show up to rob the place, he showed up to snatch a person. That difference changes everything when you are building a profile because regular thieves break in or wait until nobody is home. Thieves don't ring the bell at 2 in the morning when people are sleeping and just chill on the porch waiting for someone to come out. A robber doesn't need the homeowner to unlock anything. This guy knocked, blocked the lens, and stood his ground. He wasn't trying to kick the door down. He was playing a mind game to get Nancy Guthrie to open that lock herself. The way he operated, luring her out instead of forcing his way in, suggests he either had a relationship with the victim he thought he could use, or he knew her habits well enough to believe he could manipulate her into opening the door. Both options are terrifying. They scream that we are dealing with someone who had intimate details about Nancy Guthrie, like her schedule, her weak spots, or even who she trusted. But weirdly enough, that specific detail is actually good news for the detectives. Random thugs leave random clues. This predator left a psychological footprint that stands out like a sore thumb. Add that to his genetic material, his build, and his specialized gear, and the walls aren't just closing in, they are crushing him. Type the word exposed down in the chat if you think labs will match his DNA before 2026 ends. We are staying on this story until the handcuffs go on. Big felony cases always have a shape to them. At the start, it is an explosion moving outward where you get piles of leads, rumors, crazy theories, and way too many moving parts for one picture. Once you hit the middle phase, you start cutting away the fat. They cleared that backpack folks found, and they cleared the delivery guy they questioned and let go. They cleared the dude from that SWAT team bust on February 13th, who turned out to be a dead end. Bit by bit, the investigation shrinks from a massive circle into a tight laser beam. We are at day 32 of the hunt for Nancy Guthrie, and the focus is sharpening. The FBI moved their HQ to Phoenix, not because they are quitting, but because the job has changed. The days of combing the desert are done. Now begins the phase where they sharpen their knives and get the evidence ready for a courtroom showdown. The homicide squad on this beat has a single mission right now, and that is to stack up proof that will nail this guy in federal court. Sheriff Nanos announced on March 2nd that they are definitely gaining ground. He explained that he is keeping a tight lid on certain details because leaking them now would blow up the trap they are setting. He confirmed that the genetic evidence is still a solid gold lead despite the hurdles. That isn't the kind of thing a cop says when he is trying to cover up a botched job. That is the talk of a sheriff who knows the gears are turning. The lab work here isn't sitting around waiting for a miracle because it is aggressive, mathematical, and it doesn't stop. Down in a private Florida lab, advanced probability software is chewing through that messy DNA cocktail found at Nancy Guthrie's place. It is crunching thousands of scenarios and calculating the odds on who fits the profile. Every hour that clock ticks, the digital sketch of the man who left his cells on that porch gets sharper. Inside a federal database node, the genetic code pulled from that glove, discovered 2 miles from the crime scene, is logged and lurking. Fresh genetic profiles from bookings and guilty verdicts across America get dumped into the system daily. Each new upload automatically pings against the list of cold cases. Detectives don't run these checks by hand, where they might get exhausted or miss a detail. A machine does it, and that code doesn't sleep, and it definitely doesn't forget. The second this guy pops up on the police radar anywhere in the States, the alarms go off. Meanwhile, we have got the commercial heritage sites like Ancestry, 23andMe, and GED Match involved too. Experts are building family trees from distant cousins, checking birth certificates, making lists of suspects, and crossing off anyone who doesn't match the description or location. Sometimes this takes months, but sometimes it only takes weeks. The speed of the catch depends on how many of his kin have mailed in spit kits and how distant those matches are. You only need one family member to plant the seed. A single blood relative starts the countdown, and over 40 million Americans have handed over their genetic data. The Golden State Killer thought 40 years of silence kept him safe, but he was dead wrong. The East Area Rapist figured he was a ghost who would never be named. He was wrong. 500 predators who did everything from killing to snatching people thought they left 0 clues behind. 500 of those monsters have been tagged, cuffed, and charged strictly because of genetic family trees. The guy who took Nancy Guthrie isn't living in some magic bubble protected from that list. He lives in the real world with the same blood in his veins, subject to the same laws of science, and hunted by the exact same technology. Nancy Ellen Long came into this world on January 27, 1942, back in Kentucky. She grew up, headed west, got hitched, and raised 3 babies. She lost her husband at 46 and carried the load alone from then on. She saw her girl grow up to be a major TV news anchor. She streamed her Sunday service on the computer every single week. She loved the calm vibe of the Catalina foothills. She was 84, needed pills every day to keep her heart ticking, couldn't walk 50 yards without help, and she meant everything to her family. Whoever crept up to her porch on February 1st, 2026, no matter what twisted excuse they tell themselves, didn't steal a trophy or a political pawn. They snatched a mom and a grandma, a lady who mourned a spouse, raised a brood, and loved the desert peace, who did absolutely nothing in 84 years to deserve that nightmare at her door. And when they pulled that stunt in the shadows, they left their genetic map on the concrete, on a glove tossed in the bushes 2 miles out, and probably in the blood spilled during a fight they couldn't handle. The samples exist, and the labs are churning. The Guthrie clan laid flowers at the site on March 2nd and posted that their hope is still glowing in the blackness. That genetic code is glowing in the dark too. It doesn't fade away, it doesn't get fuzzy, and it doesn't make deals. It just sits there until the computer runs the numbers and spits out a name. We are getting there. If you know a single thing about where Nancy Guthrie went, you need to call the FBI right this second. Dial 1-800-CALL-FBI right now. The family put up a $1 million cash reward and you can stay anonymous. Check the description for the official link. We are going to cover every break, every update, and every single arrest in this saga. Hit subscribe because this isn't over and we aren't leaving. This story reminds us that behind every headline is a real human life, a real family, and a pain that words can barely hold. Nancy Guthrie is not just a name in an investigation. She is a mother, a grandmother, and a woman deeply loved by the people around her. Her disappearance teaches us that evil does not only wound one person. It sends shockwaves through an entire family, a community, and even strangers who still believe that every life matters. It also shows the power of hope joined with action. Law enforcement, forensic science, public tips, and family determination all become part of one shared mission: to bring truth into the light. In moments like this, silence helps darkness, but awareness can help justice. One call, one memory, one small detail can change everything. Most of all, this case teaches us to never grow numb to the suffering of others. Compassion is not weakness. Paying attention is not curiosity. Speaking up, protecting the vulnerable, and refusing to ignore pain are acts of humanity. When someone disappears, the world should not move on as if nothing happened. We owe every missing person dignity, urgency, and remembrance. And we owe every grieving family the promise that their loved one will not be forgotten.